And one more thing I want to say about Bill Ackman. Look, there's that saying in Batman, not the hero we need, but the hero we deserve. Or is it the hero we don't deserve, but we need? I don't know. I can never remember it, right? But like with all of his problems, I have to give this to him, he has made more progress on raising awareness about the problems in academia, the terrible direction that academia is headed than anyone I've ever seen. I've been waiting 20 years for people to start having some of the conversations that they're having now about academia and race, and critical race theory, specifically DEI, that's finally getting talked about. I wish people would talk more about the me Too infantilizing feminism that's rampant at these colleges, and the fact that you have many male students who have been falsely accused of rape, sexual assault, and so forth, and you've got these kangaroo administrative courts on these campuses that are ruling against them for political reasons. Some of them actually are suing now. One in particular I hope to have on my show is suing Yale. Bill Ackman stood up just recently, just months ago, he stood up for a man named David Sabatini, a brilliant scientist who was in contention for a Nobel Prize and was working on anti-aging and anti-cancer stuff and anti-diabetes stuff. This was a brilliant scientist at MIT, and he was forced to resign from his lab and from MIT and basically is now unemployed and useless to society. Because he had a consensual sexual relationship with a colleague, and he broke it off with her, and she got pissed, and she decided to Weinstein him out of there, as she said in a text to a friend. This is all out there. I've covered it on my channel. I'll link to it below in the comments. Well, guess what? Bill Ackman stood up for this guy, and he announced recently that he's going to, because this guy cannot get back into academia, the social justice warriors just won't allow Sabatini back in. And he tried to go to NYU. NYU was so impressed with his resume, and they said, my God, we need to snatch this guy up. He's available. And so they tried to hire him. They were going to hire him, and then guess what? Some of these woke students that are being indoctrinated in the very same classes that we're talking about at some of these schools, and the very same DEI philosophy and DEI programs and all of this shit, these students and some faculty went outside NYU and protested, and it freaked people out, and NYU had to rescind the offer. So Sabatini, this amazing, brilliant scientist, falsely Me Too'd out of a job, out of academia. And Bill Ackman stood up for him, and he said, okay, if you guys in academia won't take care of this, I will. I'm going to fund his lab to the tune of millions of dollars. So I respect Bill Ackman for that. I respect him for what I think he's trying to do here, even if in some ways I'm like, oh, come on, it's a little cringe, right? Or I don't necessarily always see where he's coming from on some of these complaints as of late. Okay, here's what I boil it down to for academia, okay, for the problems in academia. First of all, here's something that nobody even talks about. The number of classes now, even at major universities, even at Ivy League schools, that are being taught by poorly paid part-time adjunct labor or poorly paid one-year instructors with a one-year contract that are constantly being, shuffled around and fired on a whim, and grad students who are themselves struggling just to make it through grad school and take their classes and work on their theses, and not get Claudine Gay, plagiarism stuff in there, right? These are the people teaching at some of these universities over half the classes. Now, at Harvard, they claim that they only have 17% part-timers teaching, but that doesn't account for the grad students, all the grad students teaching classes, and it doesn't account for these really shitty, one-year instructor contracts that are basically almost part-time. And so I would dare say that probably, if I had to guess, 40 to 50% of classes at Harvard are not taught by what we would think of as legit, traditional tenure track professors. And I know a lot of you hate the idea of tenure, and I'm not defending that either, but here's what I'm trying to get at, okay? Where is all that money going then if it's not going to professor salaries? It's going to administrators. It's going to these ballooning administrative offices for things like DEI, diversity, equity, and inclusion, and a lot of other stuff. And of course, students these days are so fragile, and so many of them claim to be disabled so that they can game test, get extra time on tests, extra notes, extra help and stuff because of their ADHD, that you have giant disability offices now, administrative disability offices at all of these schools to handle the huge number of disabled students, that is ADHD students trying to get more time on test, that they have to deal with. So, by the way, it's not all the school's fault. Parents are feeding into a lot of this BS too, whether they want to admit it or not. But anyway, I digress. What I'm trying to get at is that you have a gigantic ballooning over the last, particularly the last 10 years, but really for the last couple of decades. You have a giant ballooning in administrative programs, administrators, bureaucrats. They make hundreds of thousands of dollars. It's no different than like in our government, right? That the lawmakers keep voting in more stuff for themselves or whatever, right? And these federal offices keep growing and growing. Well, it's happening in academia. And so what you have is that the actual core mission of the school, which is teaching and so forth, it's all like sort of shrinking. And then you've got all this BS. And a lot of these programs are very politically correct. And a lot of this ideology that we don't like, that is being pushed to students, not, sometimes, often in subtle ways in the classroom, sometimes not so subtle, but also in just the administration of the school. And I talk about more examples if you want to click on my video, my other one that I did, the longer one. So that's an issue. And a lot of that money is going to building projects that are superfluous. Like there's so many things that are so superfluous to an actual education that are now just ballooning with all of this money, all these costs. So that's one thing. Another thing is that up until very recently with this Bill Ackman stunt, but up until very recently, traditionally, there was just not enough interest by the donors and by those paying the bills of these schools into what was actually happening in these schools and the climate in these schools, the atmosphere. And so to me, it's really been astounding to me the last couple of days to hear about all of these professors, and a lot of this line of thinking we saw in the professors the last 2 days have been defending Claudine Gay. But this line of thinking like we shouldn't have to answer to billionaires. We're not going to listen. Apparently, there were a lot of people at Harvard who ended up voting for Claudine Gay yesterday or whatever because they don't want to listen to a billionaire. Okay, we don't have to listen to billionaires. We should be free of that. We're independent. Well, no, you're not fucking independent because you're getting all of this money from the billionaires. And you're getting all of this money from the government. You're getting tax breaks. You're getting student loan money or whatever. If you were to take away, and let's not forget also the parents who are writing these huge checks. You're not getting your money from yourself. You're getting it. Yes, you're getting it from these other people who have not been holding you accountable in the least for the last like 2 decades at least, probably many decades. So yeah, if we're going to cut off, we can cut off money, okay, to all of you arguing that you should be left alone to do whatever you want on these college campuses. I'm talking to the faculty, I'm talking to the admins, what have you. Okay, we'll just take away the government money and the government tax breaks and incentives and all of that and student loan money, and we'll take away the checks from the parents and the checks from the alums and the checks from the billionaires like Bill Ackman who have given you millions and millions, like hundreds of millions of dollars. Well, billions if we're talking about all of them, right? We'll just take away all of that money and then you can be free. Somebody asked me the other day, do I want a situation where faculty curriculum and where professor hires have to get rubber stamped or totally controlled by these wealthy billionaires running the school? No, absolutely not. But we have swung so far in the opposite direction. There needs to be some kind of a corrective when an institution goes off track. So the ideological imbalance at schools, it is crazy out of control. And I don't have a problem with liberals per se, like I want to ban them from campus or anything like that. And I myself have eclectic views. But it is absolutely insane that at a place of learning, 95% of your faculty are left-leaning and much more extremely left in a lot of ways than the population. To me, it shows there's something off. And don't think for 1 minute that kind of imbalance doesn't trickle down to the students and have an effect on their thinking and give them a sense that their ideas, their views are repressed or suppressed. And even faculty who think that they're not being biased in the classroom, who say, well, I don't talk about Trump or Republicans in my class, or I don't give explicitly political lectures. A lot of them, especially in certain fields, they're still bringing politics into their classrooms. It's in many ways so subtly that they don't even realize it, but students pick up on it. Hiring practices are out of control. DEI, the preference for marginalized groups, read what that means, of course, is blacks and Latinos, and sometimes women, although if we're talking about straight white women, maybe not. Um, Gays, transsexuals, etc., etc. Okay, these marginalized groups are very much favored in academia and in the hiring processes, and there are lots of things that hiring committees know that they shouldn't put in an email that shows that they are explicitly explicitly prejudiced and biased in their hiring practices against certain groups. But absolutely everyone knows it, it's understood, it's acknowledged, it is central to deliberations over faculty hires and hires like Claudine Gay, the president of Harvard. And don't think for 1 minute that one reason she's getting protected isn't because she is not only a black woman, but the first black woman, maybe the first African American to run Harvard. You saw what happened to Liz McGill, right? She's out of there. So where's that white privilege? So yeah, there's a lot of problems with academia. I could go on. I put it in a 41-minute video. I hope you check it out. All right, I will link to that below. I also wrote an article for the Daily Wire. Check that out as well. And I'll be doing more stuff on this and other things. Bye.